Well, welcome to KMBR.com, and my favorite thing every week, Gary, don't get your feelings hurt, is when I stare face-to-face into this computer and talk Giants baseball, Giants hot stove with my good friend Marty Lurie, who joins us from Mesa. Marty, Happy New Year! Happy 2016, my friend!
Boy, it's here already. It's incredible. December 31st, baseball seems like it's years away. You come to January 1st, January 2nd, and all of a sudden it's coming up before you know it. And we've got FanFest right on the horizon.
Yeah, in fact, why don't we tell people when that's coming up? February 13th at AT&T Park. Be there or be square. Giants Fan Fest 2016. It's kind of the unofficial kicking off of the season. This year, Marty, it's really close to the reporting date. The reporting date's no more than a few days after Fan Fest concludes. And, man, I can't wait for Fan Fest because the momentum of Giants baseball will be felt on that day. And with Cueto and Samardzija and whatever's coming in the outfield, the Giants bring tremendous momentum into 2016.
People talk about the even year stuff, and, there's a little bit of truth to that because it's tough to repeat. And we've seen why. The winter is tough, injuries happen. It's just tough to get it back to back. So there is something to it. But going into this season, they needed two things. They needed two starting pitchers, and they went out and got two starting pitchers, and that's exactly what they have. And the Dodger thing we're going to talk about a little bit later. You look at your competition. I feel good. I tell you, I honestly feel good about what's coming up. I think it's going to be a great story, and I think the Giants are in good position to get back into this thing.
Yeah, no, and the Giants' equation, we'll get to that as well. I think their equation right now is very exciting. But why don't we start with left field? Because left field is, the Giants signed Johnny Cueto. They signed Jeff Samardzija. They signed some minor league deals for guys like Kyle Blanks and Grant Green and the shortstop Lee, who was in Tampa's organization. Guys who are minor league 6-year free agents who are going to go to camp with a chance to make the roster. But we have a lot of reason to believe that the Giants will still make a significant move in the outfield. Though, Dave Fleming, I did hear him last week in a guest shot, suggest that there's a possibility that they'll save the money for mid-season and wait till mid-season to fill that outfield spot and kind of maybe use March as a month to figure out if Jarrett Parker or Mac Williamson or who knows, maybe Christian Arroyo can factor into that left field picture. What do you think of that concept, Marty? Doing nothing at all, not signing any of these big name guys, not making a trade, and just kind of putting your, maybe getting saving your money for July. What's your thought?
Yeah, no, I think there's a possibility of that unless something fell in their lap. Because this left field thing is kind of weird. I mean, here it is at the beginning of January, and you got Upton still out there, you got Cespedes still out there, you've got Alex Gordon out there, you've got Barr out there, and you've got Fowler out there, and you're running out of teams for these fits. So I thought last week, I said, something, if these years go down to 2 or 3, something may fall to the Giants' lap. I don't think they're getting involved in 5 or 6 years for Cespedes, Upton, or Alex Gordon. But if somebody fell to 2 or 3 years, they may make a move. Now, if that happened, I think Dexter Fowler is the most likely because he can be a center fielder for Pagan next year, or if they move Pagan, he can be a center fielder now. He does cost a draft pick, which is not a great thing for the Giants. Not great for baseball today when you lose a draft pick for picking up a guy like that. But I think Fowler is a possibility more so than Parr. Because I think Fowler is a veteran of the National League West, and I think he can play 2 outfield positions. He's a much better right-handed hitter than left-handed hitter, and with all the lefties we're going to face with the Dodgers this year, it may be nice to have a hitter like Fowler around. So I think Fowler could be the guy.
That's intriguing.
Yeah, he could fall into their lap because of what's going on in this left field thing. Look, there's only about 6 weeks to go until I'm standing there in Scottsdale, and you're calling me up, and I'll be talking to you on the cell phone saying, what's going on? I'm going to tell you, I'm standing there watching 8 pitchers throw batting practice. So this outfield thing has got to come together pretty soon. They have an MO in the past of waiting until June to see what they need and then making the move in June or July to pick up their player that they need. So The original question, I agree. They could go at it. They could go at it with Pagan in center and Blanco in left, and see who else, Jared Parker, and see what happens. That's not impossible. I think that is more likely that that will happen unless one of these outfielders falls into their lap.
Let's talk pros and cons on some of these guys. I think Gordon, they were hot to trot on Gordon early, but I think there's an increased emphasis from the Giants' perspective of going with somebody who can play center field in their ballpark.
Yeah.
And what if you sign Alex Gordon and you go to spring training and Jarrett Parker or Mac Williamson has made the step forward? You have no place to play those guys because you've locked up left field for a guy like Gordon. I'm getting the sense that Gordon, first of all, the White Sox came out and said they're interested in Cespedes and Gordon, but only on a 3-year deal. Giants probably would second that notion. But I don't know if Gordon, I'm getting the sense, Marty, that Gordon really badly wants to stay in the heartland and that he's going to go back to Kansas City or he's going to wind up in St. Louis as a replacement for Hayward. I don't see him coming west, and I don't see the Giants with their concerns about center field in 2016 and 2017. I don't think they're going to pony up the big monster 5-year, $90 million Hunter Pence deal for Alex Gordon. So I think you can put him off the list. What do you think?
No, I agree with you 100%. I don't see him spending big money here for one of these left fielders. As I say, if something happened where you could get him for a 1 or 2 year deal, absolutely. But anything more than that, it's trouble. I'll give you another name, Denard Span. And now he's coming off a hip injury. This is a legitimate leadoff hitter, a legitimate center fielder. Denard Span may be someone to watch out because it's a risk to get him because you don't know what his physically he's going to be like, but he fits the areas that we're talking about. So throw Span in there with Fowler and maybe Parr as the outside part. But with you, I'm with you on Gordon. I think he's more of a Midwest kind of guy. I love him. I think he's a great player. But I think Gordon, Cespedes, and Upton with the White Sox still in the midst of this thing, the Angels are still in the midst of this thing. These guys are going to get their money.
Cespedes is intriguing, Marty, because he's a big-time player. I mean, the leading home run hitters on the Giants barely did power numbers better than what Cespedes did in the final whatever game, 67 games with the Mets. He hit 17 bombs after the trade deadline. So he's a major force. To me, of all the guys, he's the guy that would change the dynamic of their lineup. Yeah. The upside of Cespedes is that he can play a little center field in a pinch. Heck, he won the Gold Glove this year, even though I don't know that he necessarily is at that level defensively. What's the downside of Cespedes, or what do you look at the fact that he's been on the A's and the Red Sox, and he's been on a number of different teams at this point, the Mets, and say, man, this is a guy that people are dying to have, but aren't necessarily eager to retain him? Do you look at that as a negative that he's been on the number of teams he's been on in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to look. It's like looking at an injury-prone player. You know, if a guy gets hurt every year, you wonder, gee, is he going to get hurt for us? I think you have to look at it and figure out why is this guy moving around so much. So yeah, I think that's part of it. But for him, he gets hurt. Maybe he doesn't come to play every day. But I'll tell you, I've said this for the last couple of years. When he plays, he looks like Willie Mays to me. I mean, he's got that kind of body. He's got that kind of power. He's got that kind of arm. You put this guy in left field at AT&T Park, I mean, in the perfect world, in the dream world of scenario that we like to go through, put him in that lineup and put him in left field. Come on. You couldn't wait for opening day to see what that was going to look like. It's just a question of money for him. I think he'll be an Angel. That's my take on it.
That's interesting.
Big hitter.
What about on the Parra front, the fact that the Dodgers are so lefty dominant in their rotation, and you figure they're going to be your chief competition in the division? To me, Marty, that makes Parra far less attractive because if you check the splits, his numbers against lefties, they're just pretty ordinary. And his defensive metrics are down from a year ago. I'm not as concerned about the defense. I still think he's one of the National League's better defensive outfielders, and I like the versatility. But I don't know that if you play him every day in center, he's a great defender. And I don't know that you want a guy who's left-handed in a division where LA's 5 of their top 6 starters are left-handed. What do you think?
He's another Blanco. I've always felt that, and they have Parra in Blanco. They really do. So I don't see him as the fit. I really don't, and I think he's going to get some money. I think he's got that versatility. He played well in Arizona. He did well. We were in Milwaukee for a while. Not great with the Orioles, but I think Parr is going to get his money.
Yeah, well,
I don't
here's
see him as a fit. I think they have Blanco, and Blanco is Parr, and I
right.
don't see them adding another Blanco.
You're right. No, I think you're right. I think he's Parr is better than Blanco, but they're very comparable. They do a lot of the same things. I'm going to throw out a name that I think's interesting, and he's still out there. In the off season, there's an increased emphasis on power arms, power bats. In season, there's much more emphasis on defense and speed and things that help you win. What about the name Austin Jackson? I'm an Austin Jackson fan. Of all the center field options, he is the best defensively. I think he's the guy that will make your pitching staff better. He's a right-handed hitter. You could split that time with in center field with Blanco if you want. And I think Austin Jackson might save you some offense. 285 hitter, Marty, against left-handed pitching. He's a right-handed hitter. He does swing and miss a little bit too much. He's only 29. I don't think you're going to have to pay as much for him as you would for Fowler. He's a better defender than Fowler. What do you think of the name Austin Jackson?
Yeah, I know you've loved him. I mean, you've loved him for a couple of years now. I don't think he hits, and they knocked the bat out of his hands. I saw it in Detroit. I saw it in Seattle when he was with the Yankees. I mean, he's always been a big prospect. As a fifth outfielder, maybe, but I don't want Austin Jackson leading off for me. And defensively, okay, but you got to have a guy in your organization who can run down a fly ball that you don't have to pay that kind of money to. I would say Fowler before Jackson, switch hitter, a little bit more upside as a hitter, can steal a base. Jackson, as you say, has some tools, but for me, if the game's on the line, they'll knock the bat right out of his hand.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. He's got kind of a broken swing, and I love him defensively, though, and he would be so intriguing to have. If you could put Fowler's offense on Austin Jackson's defense, I'm really intrigued. All right, let's jump to the Dodgers. And the Giant thing, who knows? It could get solved by trade. To me, it seems like they always talk trades, but when push comes to shove, they never want to trade the prospect price that it's going to take to get the player in a trade. And so they almost always wind up signing free agents. Have you noticed that trend?
Oh yeah, they very well, not necessarily. I mean, they have assets to trade. When you look at the 40 man, they put like 8 people on the 40 man, 8 pitchers on the 40 man. They still have pitchers that they could move in the organization, so they've got some assets to do it. I don't understand why they haven't made that trade, and we thought they were going to do it for the pitcher. But out of nowhere, Cueto and Samardzija, come to the team. We thought maybe for the 5th starter or for a bullpen guy, but they never did it. I still think trading is a possibility for the Giants. I think it is. It's there. I would say, why not? It doesn't cost you any money, and you're getting rid of a couple of prospects. So let's go to the Dodgers for a second. The Dodgers picked up Scott Kazmir.
Right.
They picked up Kenta Maeda. They've got Anderson. They've got Wood. They've got McCarthy coming back. They've got Kershaw. And then they have a shoulder injured guy, Ryu, maybe coming back. I'm thrilled with what they did. I mean, as a Giant fan, I said, as long as Greinke's not there, I don't care who they get to replace him, as long as it's not Jose Fernandez. So, Maeda is a middle of, or to the back of the rotation guy. Pitchers from Japan very rarely come out and give you 200 innings or give you a big year. And if they do it, it's just for 1 year. He doesn't look like the kind of guy that is going to be that kind of impact player. So I'm glad about that. Kazmir, I think, is an excellent pitcher, but he's a guy who has not lasted a whole season his last couple of years. And then you get Ryu, who's coming back from a shoulder surgery. I mean, it's one thing elbow. Shoulder surgery is not good. This is not good for a pitcher. So I think the Dodgers are in that position. I'll say it again. The organization is changing. They're trying to be smarter than anybody else. They're saying, we're young, we can figure this out. We'll do it without our payroll. Meanwhile, they lost one of their best pitchers that they could have because they didn't want to pay him. The Dodgers didn't want to pay somebody. They lost their best pitcher, and they haven't really replaced him. I think the Giants, knowing where the Dodgers are at, don't have to do anything dramatic right now. I think the Giants say, okay, we got our bullpen, we can get it done. Dodgers still have a lot of questions. Howie Kendrick is gone. They still have 5 guys for 3 spots in the outfield. Kenley Jansen is there. They didn't pull the trigger on Chapman, who ended up as a Yankee. I think this winter, the Giants have to feel really good about where the Dodgers are right now.
No, I totally agree. The Dodgers also lost a little bit of their swagger. The mystique of being able to outspend everybody is kind of washed away now that Greinke's moved on.
They don't want to do it. They want to say, we're smarter than you. We're going to figure this out, and we're the smart guys. And I'm telling you, this is what it's incredible, but this is what they've turned into.
They still have a lot of prospects if they want to make moves happen. Andrew Friedman has that capability. But I'll tell you, I really think their rotation is going to blow up physically. Kazmir's arm, iffy. Ryu's arm, iffy. Brett Anderson has always been one of the guys who's an injury risk. Let's not also discount. I talked to a baseball scout who spent all of last year in Japan this week, and he said to me, Kenta Maeda getting an 8-year contract is crazy. Yeah. He said, in Japan, you're talking about a guy who pitches once a week. Now he's going to be asked to pitch every 5th day. He throws 6 pitches, but he's got a fastball that's about 91 to 93, and his second best pitch is his slider. This guy says it's kind of a slurvy slider that as he fatigues, really lessens its bite and effectiveness as the season goes on. And he says every one of his other pitches, the 4 other pitches that he throws after that, are all subpar pitches. He doesn't have plus pitches. So you got a pitcher who's going to be asked to do more physically, and he's a diminutive in stature player. You've added Kazmir, who's always hurt, to a rotation that already has injuries, and a pitcher in Japan who I think may be really good in April and May, but what does he look like in late July through the end of the year? And this scout didn't think that he would hold up. So I think LA's got some serious question marks about the durability of their rotation over the course of the long haul. We'll see.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a great point on Maeda. He got an 8-year contract for $25 million. Come on, Gary Radnich makes that much money. They gave it to this guy, and believe me, he's got a lot of incentives. But look at Darvish, look at Tanaka, look at Matsuzaka, look at Iwakuma, look at the ones Ishii. Go back to Kuroda. Look at all of them that have come from Japan. It's not a slam dunk. And this guy comes without those kind of credentials. So let's see what happens. He may end up being a bullpen guy.
Well, and he's an intriguing guy because will there be pressure? Who's the guy who mans the Yasmero Petit role? Is it him? Is it Alex Wood? Is it Brett Anderson? New management. It's going to be very interesting in Dodgerland.
Very much so. And what about Arizona?
Well, Arizona, I think, is intriguing. I'm hearing that they're kicking tires on Howie Kendrick right now. That Howie Kendrick may leave the Dodgers and go to the Diamondbacks. And if they can make that a reality, they flirted with the idea of Brandon Phillips. And once Phillips said, if you're going to trade for me, I want a big money long-term extension, Arizona said, whoa, no. So I think they're moving on to Kendrick. And if they add Kendrick, Marty, I think they're a player. Goldschmidt, they got a real nice team. They got a strong rotation. I like Arizona. I think Arizona's going to be a tough team to battle all summer.
Yeah. Kendrick is a big piece. I'm surprised Washington went for Murphy for 3 years instead of Howie Kendrick. I don't really get that, but what can I tell you on that one? Arizona still with the bullpen and with the Cole Mentors of the world, and these guys are still there. And they now have Shelby Miller and Greinke, but they still have the rest of them. So we'll see. And the bullseye is on them. Let's see how they play. But, you add a guy like Kendrick with Pollock and Goldschmidt, and all of a sudden you have, 3 guys in the top of the lineup that can hurt you.
Before we move into different directions, let me just say this. We had talked early in the offseason about the Atlanta Braves as a good partner for the Giants via trade. I still would love to see the Giants and the Braves get together. I would love to see the Giants take one of their pitching prospects and Angel Pagan, send him to Atlanta, and in return take back the money that they don't want to spend on either Markakis or Bourne. They're real eager to move Bourne and Swisher, and they would love to get out from underneath Markakis' money. I would love to throw a pitching prospect in Pagan to Atlanta for Bourne, who can play center. He's not great, but he can play center. or Markakis and Julio Teheran. And to me, if that would be a wonderful deal in a lot of fronts, it would open up center field for maybe a Fowler, as you said, maybe a signed Fowler and make a trade like that. I think it's intriguing, and I think the Braves are so eager to move money, and I think the Giants have enough financial wiggle room. I think the Giants could take a Markakis or a Bourne and pay a little bit more money than what the Braves would have to pay Pagan, and maybe for that effort, they could get Tehran for a pitcher who's a year or two away. Give me your quick thought on that.
Yeah, first I think Tehran, that ship has sailed because they got Cueto and Samardzija, so I think that's the end of
But I
that.
think Tehran it could be a closer, Marty. I think he could be an eighth inning guy. I think he could be
No, you're not
another
getting. This is a
starter.
200 inning guy. You're not making him a closer. No,
I think he could be a great one.
that ship has sailed. That's gone. But Michael Bourne, this is very good. Good knowledge. I like that. Michael, they want to get rid of Michael Bourne. They're gonna eat all the money. He's got an option for 17. Cleveland's paying part of that for Swisher as well. Cleveland's kicking in all sorts of money. Michael Bourne, I've always liked him. And what was he with Houston when he went to the Phillies? I forget. How did that work out? I forget.
He was in Houston. He was in, he's in Cleveland. I mean,
Wanted
he's
that guy.
from Houston.
Yeah, Michael. I wanted Michael Bourne. That was a guy that I wanted years ago. I thought
Maybe a little bit less than Angel Pagan offensively, but a little bit more than Angel Pagan defensively.
he's a major league leadoff guy. The problem with Angel Pagan is, God forbid, this guy gets hurt. Then they're sunk again in the leadoff position. Now you got to do all sorts of things. They need a legitimate major league backup guy as a leadoff hitter. You don't want to put Duffy there. Tomlinson isn't going to be playing enough to put him there. You don't want Crawford at the top of the lineup. You got to look at what you got. Blanco, we've seen him in the leadoff spot. He's much better down in the lineup. So I like Bourne. I like it.
And the intriguing thing about Fowler is that I think he drew like 84 walks this year. His patience at the plate is outstanding. He doesn't have great defensive metrics, but he's only 29. He's a switch hitter. Gives you that versatility. Maybe he plays a little left until for this year. Maybe he's your center fielder in 2017. I like the Fowler name. I know there are people that are not hot to trot on Fowler, but I thought he proved in Chicago this summer that his offense is not a product of Denver.
Yeah, no, and also the problem is, and we talked about John Barr, and how much John Barr has meant to the Giants in the scouting department. You look at organizations, the key is evaluating players. I learned this way back in Miami when Don Shula first came to the Dolphins. Overnight, this guy evaluated players and changed the whole face of the Dolphins, turned them into the great team of the 70s. So I really learned it then what evaluation's all apart. So, Fowler cost you a draft pick, and John Barr is your guy. You lost the draft pick already with Samardzija. Now you're going to lose another one with Fowler. I think that's a little bit of the downside with Fowler.
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad you brought this up because that's the upside of the Dodgers offseason from their perspective is they do have an army of picks because Kendrick's moving on and they're letting other guys go. And so they're going to wind up in the June draft with an army of picks, and I think that's what Friedman's game plan is. They think they're smart. They think they're going to go into the amateur draft and kick butt. Let's talk more about John Barr for a second. I brought him up this week because all this talk about Trent Baalke, and I heard a couple different people compare Trent Baalke to the Giants and where they were with Sabian, let's say around 2006, 2007, before they won the 3 titles, that there were Giant ownership people who were not happy with Sabian because the Giants system wasn't producing any players. And I brought up Jack Hyatt, a gentleman that you and I both know, former Giant catcher, who was a hell of a baseball teacher, but didn't have a great eye for talent. He led the Giant farm system and drafts for a number of years. Dick Tidrow helped out with pitching, but the position players were largely the responsibility of the scouts and Jack Hyatt. Nothing against Jack Hyatt, but in his 16 or 17 years, the Giants really struggled to find position players. Finally, there was enough pressure put on Sabian where he went out and got John Barr away from the Dodgers. And Barr was the guy who found Mike Mussina with the Orioles and Ben McDonald and Russell Martin with the Dodgers and A.J. Burnett and Paul Wilson with the Mets. And this guy had a good eye for talent and a track record of success. He comes in year 1. And since that point, Marty, Brandon Belt, Joe Panik, Buster Posey, Matt Duffy, I mean, the list goes on. The Giants now, their equation of how they want to go about building a winner is enhanced greatly by the presence of John Barr. And you still have Tidrow there handicapping the pitching effectively, but now you've got Barr, and they've got a whole nother slew of real prospects. Williamson, Parker, Christian Arroyo. These are real players. And they're all there in the organization because of the presence of John Barr. And it's amazing. Sabian gets credit. Evans gets credit. The ownership group, Bochy, the player. Nobody ever talks about John Barr. And to me, the Warriors didn't turn it around until Bob Myers drafted all these guys, Steph Curry in the lottery, and made the thing turn around. The Giants wouldn't have won their 3 titles without the core players that we're talking about that John Barr drafted. And it's amazing that John Barr still, his notoriety stays so low, and I don't even think the average Giants fan understands this guy may be the most valuable member of the organization. You're around it. Give me your thought.
Yeah, there's no question. Evaluation is the key to sports. You've got to get the players, and it's the hardest thing is to predict in an 18-year-old what he's going to be like as a man, as a 22-year-old, let alone a baseball player. Plus now, if you get kids in college, at least you get to see a few years of them. You can't miss with these top picks. When you start missing with the top picks, like the 49ers have, you get in trouble. You can't correct everything through the free agent draft. So I think he's been terrific. I really do. It'd be nice to see some of the corner people that he drafts become big hitters. The kid from Boston College, Shaw.
Chris Shaw.
I love this kid. I think this kid's attitude, this kid is just a slugger.
He's like a Jim Tomei, huh? He looks like a Jim Tomei.
Ted Kluszewski. He looks like a slugger.
Ted Kluszewski, the guy who used to cut his arm sleeves off with the Reds?
Yeah, with the Reds. I mean, he looks
that's good knowledge.
The attitude of Ted Kluszewski. I'm telling you, these guys, Ray Jablonski, Gary will like this. So, it'd be nice to see him get some corner guys who, come up. And I like this kid, Shaw. But Arroyo is coming in. Yeah, there's no question. Look, John Barr heads an organization of scouting. It takes a lot of people to make these picks. It's not just him. But when you have someone who understands it and can lead other people and help evaluate, it works. And it has worked for him.
Oh, and the Giants understand one thing under Barr as well, and that is they've put an emphasis on catching in the draft. Because their belief, Marty, is if you go for top-tier catchers, not only do you have top-tier players at a very vital position, but it also helps you develop your young pitching all the way, every step through the minor leagues. So you've seen Tommy Joseph. Now you're seeing Aramis Garcia, Buster Posey, Andrew Susac. They've emphasized that position, and when they've had a surplus there, without Tommy Joseph, you don't have Hunter Pence.
I learned this as a kid growing up. I said, you want a child? Give him a catcher's glove. Put the tools of ignorance on him. Catchers are very important. Casey Stengel said if you don't have a good catcher, you got a lot of pass balls. That's why Hobie Landreth was his first pick of the Mets in 1962. You got to have good catching, and it's a great asset. I've said this many times with Branch Rickey. You learned it from him, maybe the smartest man ever in baseball. When you get all these prospects and then you can trade them, it's like having a printing press with money. It's like having money in the basement. You pull out 2 or 3 prospects, you put them in classifications where they excel. Maybe they're a little better than the classification they're in. They got great numbers, and all of a sudden they're gone, and you bring a major leaguer back. I love it. Look, Bickford is here. That's another pitcher. The Giants are loaded with prospects that they could trade. Getting Samardzija Cueto now puts Beatty in a different situation, puts Stratton in a different situation. A couple of these bullpen guys. Let's see how this plays out. I think you brought it up earlier in our discussion, and I agree with you. They're a team that likes to look at June and July and see where they are. They've got the printing press in the basement with these prospects, and I think that's why they're going to hold on to them.
Well, it's interesting. The prospects thing's always interesting because prospects are just prospects until they're players.
Well, they ain't done nothing. To quote the great Dave Henderson, who we love, the late Dave Henderson. Yeah, and he said this to me. I said, Dave, he's a prospect. He said, you know what a prospect is? He ain't done nothing yet. That's
great.
What I love Hendu, and I miss him greatly. But that's what a prospect is. They ain't done nothing yet, and if you can move them for a major leaguer, That's the lifeblood of baseball.
Well, and it's awesome because John Barr now has, between his drafting, the Giants' financial machine where they have deep pockets because of the support of the fan base, the combination of the farm system churning out real talent, and then you've got real money to spend, and you've got a roster, you've made good decisions like Sabian has at the major league level over the last decade, and what you have is you have a slew of ammunition to get you the pieces that you need, and now it's just a matter of deciding exactly what you need. I think it's far easier for Bobby Evans to be a general manager of a club like this that has this kind of wealth organizationally than it was for Sabian in the 90s to keep the Giants at 90 wins every year without these top-tier prospects.
Yeah, no, they are ready. They're ready. As I said to you 2 weeks ago, I'm still waiting for Bobby Evans to make his first trade, the first real trade. Not Marlon Byrd. We haven't talked about Marlon Byrd at all either, as a possibility to come back. But they have these prospects. It's going to be amazing to see what they have. Look, I saw some film the other day of the Giants in 2015, and there's Belt, and there's Crawford, and there's Panic, and Duffy, and and there's Pence in the outfield, and Posey, and the pitchers. And you forget how good they are. They're very good. They were hurt last year. They're very good. And I think with these pitching additions and a little bit of bullpen manipulating, they're going to be very tough.
Well, and last year, their starting pitching in the minor leagues was not ready to graduate to the major leagues. This spring, my guess is they will have a guy or two ready to go. Who that guy is it Crick? Is it Beatty? Is it Block? We're going to find out. But they've had a whole year to develop, and I think that's going to help them. Let's finish up with Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame because I think this is a hot button issue and one that I feel very, very happy about, very proud. I took several writers to task for their whole "we're the moral compass of the world" approach to handling the Hall of Fame. Nick Cafardo says, you know what? We don't know definitively who took the PEDs and who didn't take the PEDs. So guess what? I'm just taking the best players and I'm voting the best 10 players in for the Hall of Fame. And I know certain guys dabbled in this and did something, but I don't know exactly what percentage. And from the players I've talked to, I know it's a solid percentage, maybe even a majority of players that dabbled in these PEDs during this era and over the last 15, 20 years. And so he says, you know what? He's voting for Bonds and for Clemens. And then you had Buster Olney come out and say, you know what? The writers have to stop. They are not the moral majority. They are not somehow the moral compass for the world. We're not putting people into the gates of heaven. We're putting them into the Hall of Fame. It's a museum. It needs to record history. Writers need to record history and not become history. To me, I think this is all stuff I was saying years ago, and I'm happy that the dialogue has gotten to this point. I would say Barry Bonds had 440 home runs and was one of the 5 or 6 best players that we've ever seen and before 1998. And to keep him out of the Hall of Fame when Major League Baseball hasn't stricken down his records. They're not declining, not allowing him to work with the Marlins. He's not persona non grata in the game. He's on the Hall of Fame ballot, unlike Pete Rose. Put Bonds and Clemens in. They were surefire first ballot Hall of Famers clean. That obviously didn't happen. But these guys are Hall of Famers, Marty. And for the writers to act like they've been charged with being the moral cops of the sports world, it just doesn't jive. It makes no sense, and it needs to end. Give me your thought.
Well, look, you mixed a lot of issues up there. What is the Hall of Fame? Is it a museum, or is it a privilege and honor of people who are great baseball players and good character can be put in this shrine?
Marty, I don't want to interrupt you, but let me just jump you right there.
I know.
The guy who wrote the character clause is Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who openly fought for baseball to remain segregated. That, in and of itself, kind of calls that whole clause into question, does it not?
Yeah, well, there's no question. It's outdated. And the question we're now getting to 2016, what is this place? Is it a place that we look at the great players of all time and you put them in and explain or the history of the game? Is it the Smithsonian where we take the great moments of baseball and record them here so for posterity, people can go to Cooperstown like they go to Washington and see the Smithsonian Institute of Aviation, and we have it for baseball. It's more than that. It's the essence, it's the heart of the game. And if you cheated the game, we say you don't belong in this shrine, this mythical Disneyland of baseball. So we have to define in our own minds what it is. And if you buy into the mythical shrine of Disneyland, then you say, well, someone's cheated the game. Now, how do you prove they cheated the game? Well, Pete Rose gambled. We know that's pretty clear. We know the Black Sox scandal is pretty clear. But do you know for a fact what Clemens did? Do you know for a fact what Bonds did? If I had to stake my life on it, I'd say yes, they used steroids. Are they Hall of Fame caliber players on the field? Absolutely. It's ridiculous. Come on, Roger Clemens, he's one of the greatest pitchers ever. Bonds, one of the greatest players ever. Piazza is going to get in. There's never been any proof of his steroid use. He's the greatest offensive catcher in the history of the game.
How about Bagwell? Bagwell's got a Hall of Fame resume. He's been waiting for years, all on the suspicions with zero evidence. There's no evidence that he used anything.
See, that's what's changing now. And I always said that you've got 10 years. It used to be 15. Now you got 10 years to figure it out. Over this 10-year period, attitudes change. And now we're getting to the point of, hey, like you just said, there's no proof. Give me substantial proof that this guy cheated the game. And then, okay, as a writer, I'll take some responsibility for the Hall of Fame. There's no proof on Piazza. There's no proof on Bagwell. There's no proof. Tim Raines is probably getting in as well. If you had Ricky Henderson, Tim Raines is the closest thing to Ricky Henderson without being Ricky Henderson.
No, he belongs in. Tim Raines was awesome. I don't think people even understand what Tim Raines was. Tim Raines was, without Ricky Henderson, we'd be talking about Tim Raines in a totally different light. If he played at a different era than Ricky Henderson, we would be talking about Tim Raines was an incredibly studly player, power, speed. He was an awesome talent. He needs to be in that hall.
He used cocaine. He slid into second base with a vial in his back pocket. This was the rap against Tim Raines. That's what has put him in the early '80s drug culture. So that's sullied his record. But you get to the point of what is this place, and we can't be so morally judges of baseball and people where it's a witch hunt. And unless you have absolute proof that someone cheated the game, view them for what they did on the field. It's okay. It's only the Hall of Fame. It's not rocket surgery.
Put Hall of Famers in the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds, pre-1998 or pre-1999, had 440 home runs and was one of the 5 or 6 best players of the last 50 years. He needs to be in there, and so does Clemens.
Steroids, we know he did. Sosa did it. McGuire did it. We know that Clemens, I would assume if I had to stake my life on it, Clemens did it. What's that? What are we arguing about? We're arguing about someone should be voted in to a small village in Cooperstown, which you can't even find it.
Exactly. Marty, once again, we tell people February 13th, Giants Fan Fest at AT&T Park. Happy New Year to you. Always a pleasure talking ball with you. We'll do it again soon.